Hey you guys, this is Dawn. Welcome back to Gulf Coast October. And in this series, I've been reading my book called Enchanted in Bay St. Yaya. And I would love it if you'd hang out with me while I read Chapter 11, Making Memories and Finding Surprises in Geographic Cultures magazines. Gotta get that thumbnail in there. Hey there, we are on the beautiful Harpeth River this morning. I have been blessed that we are here alone other than the blue jay, but the blue jay is going to talk, so we're just going to have to deal with that. Chapter 11, Making Memories and Finding Surprises in Geographical Cultures magazines. I didn't dream of Bird that night, or if I did, I didn't remember. I awoke anxious in a good way, but I was scared too. Okie Doke and I strolled the beach early. The sky was yellow and blue, and fat white clouds stalked the high parts of the sky. The gulls were up to their usual shenanigans, and they were disco dancing with the sparkles on the water. Some of the more rebellious ones appeared to be doing the electric slide, and it looked as if Okie was role-playing along with them. Her bloodline is to hunt, her heart is to play. I was aware that things were rolling along. I wanted desperately to thank whatever guide was helping me, but I wasn't exactly sure who to thank. I stared out across the horizon of the Gulf of Mexico and took a moment to clear my head. I looked around on the shoreline for anything special to put in my pocket. A shark-eyed hermit crab shell caught my eye. These were few and far between anymore. The casinos had hit the mollusks hard when the dockside gambling was legalized. This particular shell was vacant and bleached out from the sun. These don't go in my pocket. They go back out for someone else to occupy. Just before I threw it back into the water, I whispered "thank you" into the opening. I held it to my cheek, then to my ear, and I could hear a small impression of the ocean. You are welcome. I wanted to start the day as right as possible, so I took the dog home, I got dressed, and was sitting in the church nave before anyone else. In quiet contemplation, my eyes darted up and down from the huge crucifix on the wall to the tabernacle just below it where the communion host is kept. I wanted to ask Jesus how much of his hand had been active in my recent days, but I didn't know which object to focus on. So I looked at the statue of Mary in the far left corner and I asked her instead. I whispered, "Holy Mary, Mother of God, help me understand it, be the will of Christ." The sun shone through the stained glass window from above the front doors, casting a brilliant red light that covered the entire center area behind the pulpit. This not only lit up the tabernacle and crucifix, it also cast a particular wavy hue across the white dove painting above Christ's head. "Gotcha," I softly replied. I heard the creak of the door and was happy to see my friend Mary. We normally don't sit together, but she genuflected at my row and slid on in. She can have a big mouth at times, but she holds this space sacred, so we quietly sat until the bell tolled and Father Fourleaf greeted the congregation. "Good morning, good people." "Good morning, Father." "It is good indeed," he replied as always. He began to talk about the anniversary of the first introduction of the Gregorian calendar to the Catholics, more than 400 years before. But I didn't even know what a Gregorian calendar was, and I lost interest quickly. My attention spanned back to the tabernacle, and I noticed that it now seemed green in hue. I had never before paid so much attention to the colors from the windows, but today they were bright and vivid. Father had a perfect halo just above his hairline, balancing delicately in his hair. No one else seemed to notice, so I took it as a personal message that I may be a bit overdue for confession. After Mass, Claire and I hugged, Joe, Al, and I kissed cheeks, but Mary walked home with me so we could catch up. She had gained a few pounds from all that cake at the hole and was wearing a new pair of overalls. "Don't get old, kid," she laughed as she patted her backside. Too late, I thought. My body was all right, but my brain was ready to retire. Back at the house, even though I hadn't told Claire, I told Mary about the nursing home while I organized supplies into bags. "I think it's real smart that you're checking things out on your own. I remember back when I started the garden and the housing projects. Oh, I was terrified." "You did?" I interrupted. "I didn't know that." "It was taken over a few years back to a lady like me who'd lived there for a few years before figuring out how to get out. Sometimes in life we need to move aside and let someone else be of service. I was grateful for the break. Anyway, I feel the pain for days after kneeling in my own dang garden. I couldn't do it anymore." "Teach a man to fish?" "That's right. I was taught, so I passed it on." "Who taught you?" "Well, that's a story. You see, I couldn't grow mold if I tried, but I desperately wanted a green thumb. Many young girls wanted a husband and kids. I wanted to grow plants. I even prayed to the mother herself. After a series of odd God moments and missing the messages, I was led to Hildegard von Bingen." "Who's that?" I asked. "Well, besides that I wanted her desperately to be my conversion saint, she was a pain in the ass like me. She was smarter than everyone around her, even the men, and they probably knew it. She wrote music, had visions, painted things you'd never seen anything like, and was a master gardener. Really? Oh, yes, indeed. She could cure almost anything with, get this, crystals. I truly believe she guided me. Day in and day out, signs were being sent, but I just couldn't believe it. I felt silly. I would push things off as if I was looking too hard into nothing. One day, things just clicked. So I took baby steps here and there. 1 year and 3 months from my very first row, I had more tomatoes, green beans, okra, and zucchini than anyone knew what to do with. One day I dropped some off at the church, which I'd been peeking in and out of, and I just knew. I knew I'd been given a gift. I knew I needed to pass it on. That was back before Father Freddie died. He was such an encourager. He wouldn't do the hard work for me. No ma'am. I had to present my ideas to build a community garden to that mean, ignorant housing super all by myself. That's what I did only yesterday, but Miss Diamond was nice. I wish I'd had those kind of guts. You didn't think too hard about it like I did. I drove myself crazy. Was it hard to get the complex manager to help you? Nope. Turned out he was a fall-down drunk and wouldn't have cared if I started a strip club. She laughed so loud that it echoed up the stairs and back again. Rudy yelled, "Help!" That goofy bird, she said. He never liked me much. Later. Miss Diamond was digging around in her car when I pulled into the parking lot. My window was down and she started talking to me before I fully stopped the car. "Well, hello again, Miss Lalaman," she said with a huge smile. "Oh, honey, you're bright red. What did you do?" "It's just a bit of anxiety. I've had it my whole life. I'm okay, I promise." I stopped, got out, gathered my things. She was still talking, but I tuned it out. I stood by her car and was holding my book to my chest so tight that I bent the back cover. My backpack felt like it weighed 50 pounds with all the paper scraps, seashells, threads, glue, scissors. Diamond had a rolling cart stacked with books. A lot of books. At least 50 or 60 or maybe even more. "Wow, you really have a lot of books. I thought you said to keep it simple." "Yes, ma'am." "Do we need all of those? How many people are coming?" "All of them," she laughed. "We have a total of 64 men and women here at Seagull Wing. About 19 people are bedridden. Everyone else signed up, honey." "Even the men?" "The men wouldn't miss it for the world. It's where all the women will be," she said with a wink. Holy shit. Now everything is set up, but the people came before I could get the books on the table. I pulled out the projector, and you're going to need it. There's a screen on the wall so everyone can see what you're doing. It's always in the closet there for you if you need it. Don't ever be afraid to look for anything. If you need it, just make sure you put things back. Yes, ma'am. The main door was propped open, and I could hear the chatter and clatter of the residents from the sidewalk. Breathe. I can do this. The scales came into my mind. I can do this. But I need help. In my mind, I saw an ocean of elderly people pouring out of one side of my scale. I was on the other, and I was all alone. Soon enough, however, other figures appeared with me. First, I saw my little shadow guide, La Corteza. Next, I saw my grandmother, and then my grandfather. I saw Bird, and I wanted to cry. I saw St. Mary, St. Joseph, and I even saw a young man that looked familiar, yet I didn't quite recognize. But it didn't take me long to realize that it was Anthony Francis. I saw an alligator crawl in and stand up with their hands together in prayer. Then slowly I started imagining my living friends as well. With them all surrounding me, the weight of the scales balanced out. My attention began to focus on a lady. Who was she? She was tall and elegant with long black and copper hair. She reminded me of someone. I shrugged it off. All 8 round tables were full, and quite a few folks in wheelchairs had rolling hospital bed tables. It occurred to me to call Claire. Hello? Claire, hey, it's me. Well, hello, dear. How are you? Where are you? It's noisy. Yeah, I'm kind of pressed for time. Do you think you could gather up the rest of the materials, except the beachcomber containers, and meet me at the Seagull Wing nursing home? Bring them in baskets if you have to. Well, of course. What time do you need me? I don't know, like 5 minutes ago? Consider me there. Most of my anxiety melted. There was a large folding table at the back of the room, so that is where we unpacked. Diamond smacked a small stack of books down and the room became silent. She pulled a chair to one end and sat down. I forced myself to look up and out at the myriad of eyeballs. I thought it would be impossible, but it wasn't. It wasn't impossible at all. I knew everything was meant to be just the way it was at this moment. I spoke. How many of you all have no clue what we're doing? The room erupted into laughter, and most of the folks raised their hand. I couldn't help but smile. I set Bird's memory book on the projector and flipped on the light. I looked to the screen to check it out. It only needed a little bit of adjusting, and I was impressed with myself. I could hear the residents make sounds of approval, and when I looked, I could see people smiling and nodding as well. Diamond got up, and together with myself and another employee, we passed out almost every book. It took a little while, but by the time we were done, Claire was standing in the doorway with 2 large garbage bags. Strands of her orange hair were sticking out of her bun and seemed almost clear in the sunlight. She came as fast as she could. One of the bags was filled with medium-sized baskets. She's a quick-minded woman, and she asked the employee to put 2 on each round table and 1 on each of the bed tables. She then quickly filled the baskets with any extra crafting bits she had: stickers, ribbons, charms, lace, and more. Diamond passed out the scissors and the glue. The whole operation was like a well-oiled machine. I was free to explain what we were going to be working on. "Hello, everyone." I glanced at Diamond, and she twirled her finger in the air, motioning for me to speak louder. "My name is Dearie. How is everyone? Can y'all hear me okay?" Folks were smiling and nodding. Diamond nodded too and gave me a thumbs up. Claire leaned up against the entrance wall behind everyone, crossed her arms, and seemed very proud of me. "As a little girl," I began, "I loved looking through old family albums. I could look through them for hours, but this particular one was made by me. Actually, it's not finished, and maybe it never will be. This is a scrapbook of sorts that I have been working on in memory of my best friend. I've received compliments and requests to make them for others, but these things are personal. I did, however, want to share my idea in case anyone else happened to have a shoebox of memories hiding under their bed collecting dust." I opened the book to the first page, and people awed. It moved me. "Of course, they will all look different. It is very personal, and you may never fill it up. It's not about the end product. It's about the memories you have while you're working in it." I slowly turned the pages, pausing for the count of 7 between each turn. I explained the area that hadn't been decorated yet, then I skipped to the back and showed the pages that Lauren was the most enamored with, the final memory pages. So I also explained that today we would be focusing on decorating the outside, and next week we could start adding photos and mementos. That's okay if you don't have any photos. You can write out memories, letters, or maybe draw pictures this week to prepare. You can also cut out magazine photos that remind you of your loved ones. This can be focused on any one person or your whole family. It's whatever you want. It took a bit for folks to get started, but once they did, everyone seemed happy. I noticed that my wheelchair people had scooched into their own circle as well. Claire and I both walked from table to table asking if folks needed help. Everyone just wanted to thank us. I heard many stories of people living and gone that the residents missed deeply. Claire and I met back up at the projector. "I knew you were up to something, but this," she said, motioning to the people. "I'm as shocked as you are. I thought maybe 10 people max, but yeah, and thank you." "Can I make one?" she asked. "I'd be offended if you didn't." I pointed toward Diamond, who had made a cozy nest of supplies for herself, close to where I presented. When I did, she waved at Claire to join her. It was a great day. Cleanup was not too bad. I had plenty of help. I was allowed to store some things there, as one of the closets was assigned for activities. Diamond asked if I'd be back the next week, and when I said yes, she handed me a check for $50. "What's this for?" I asked. "25 is for the class, and 25 is toward supplies." My mouth opened a little bit. Claire tagged me with her elbow, swaying her hips side to side, and she winked. "Thank you," I said softly. "No, ma'am, thank you. You can get a check for teaching once a week and a supplies allowance once a month." Diamond patted my arm hard and smiled big at me one last time before she left. Claire and I grabbed a coffee from the concession counter and gabbed on about all the different people and the stories we heard. She was careful not to praise me, hence I may shut down. We talked like adults who had just done a normal thing, just like any other day. No big whoop, but still, we went to the hole to celebrate. "Hello, ladies," June said. "Hey, June, put on a pot of decaf if you don't mind," I hollered back confidently. "You got it." Mary was there, and it seemed as if she was about to leave, but she resettled in her booth, flopped her arms back behind her, and asked me how it went. I tried to hold in my immature urge to get loud and talk with my hands, but nobody's perfect. I gave a bit of a rundown on the memory book class, then sighed, and I melted down into the booth. June complimented me, poured my coffee, and asked if I wanted a celebration slice of pie or ice cream. This made me think of Lauren. "Actually, I'm craving something," I began. I was nervous that I'd get picked on, but I gave it a go. "Do you have pineapple?" "Yes, I believe I do." "May I have a root beer float with a pineapple slice in it?" I asked, hunching down a bit and showing my teeth in an awkward display of acknowledgement. "Pineapple floaty," Mary said. "How about 4 pineapple floaties? Come sit with us, June," Claire requested. June, Mary Claire, and I hung out and goofed off until June clocked out, and then we sat outside laughing way past sunset. I had moments of true appreciation for these women, individually and together, but I was secretly wishing that Pauline up in Tennessee could be here too. Then I felt guilty for having to find something flawed with the situation. I barely even called Pauline anymore, but I've always had a problem with out of sight, out of mind. So when I got home, I called her. She hadn't been doing well, which led to more guilt, but she assured me she was fine. She was so happy to hear about the nursing home and my friends, but was sad to hear about Bird's passing. I told her about Lauren. She joked about marriage and babies, but I informed her that he was quite dapper and too sincerely charming for someone like me. She bragged about her grandbabies, talked about medical tests, and told me about a midnight high-speed chase that happened in town that led to a car landing inside of a local hardware store. The driver was a 13-year-old girl. It was all very exciting, but nothing she told me made me miss Tennessee. If anything, I was happier to be here on the coast. I'd accomplished so much in such a small amount of time. That evening's walk with Okie Doke was later than usual, and even though I really wanted to hit the hay and chance I dreamed of Bird, I sat on the patio past midnight. I was flipping through an old Geographical Cultures magazine and came across a section on small town lore in southern Louisiana. Right there, in a beautiful tinted image taken by a professional photographer, was a taxidermied alligator, upright, wearing a crown of flowers, and surrounded with candles. It was an altar to her. "What in the holy hell?" I gasped. The caption read, "St. Charlie Chubby, as locals refer to her, will grant wishes, but she demands a sacrifice in return." Still, devotees trust her and petition her. I couldn't believe it. I read the whole page, the first ever in all my years of flipping through these magazines. I'd only ever looked at the photos. But this was like divine intervention. It talked about an elderly man who, under her spell, flung himself into a wood chipper in front of God and everybody else, spraying his blood and guts into the murky bayou for the little fish to enjoy. I thought about the gas station man in Anna Branch and his wife. As I started to tear out the photograph of the folk saint, I noticed the article on the next page. "Shit zippers," I yelped. I saw a painting of a woman. She looked so familiar, bony with crazy black and copper hair, and her teeth, they were sharp and they poked out from her bright red lips. She was the mystery woman in my scales vision earlier before the class at the Seagull Wing. No way, but yes way. This article was even longer than the last one. The title read, "Storyville Phantom, Beldam or Bedlam?" I was so excited to read it that my eyes were moving faster than my brain could process, and I kept having to start over. Finally, I made myself read it loud and slow. According to it, she wasn't exactly feared by the innocent. Most street workers, male and female alike, called on her to protect them. Eventually, only the cockiest of men dared take what they pleased with freedom and force. The locals knew the real story. The beldam of Storyville hunted rapists. My, I said. I leaned back and I fell asleep. I awoke to the garbage men making a ruckus, laughing and throwing the cans down. I slept good and deep, straight through until I was awoken. I watched the men. That has to be a filthy job. It was barely 7 a.m., yet they were bright-eyed and bushy-tailed, and their happiness was contagious. I noticed a pair of purple lace panties displayed at the top of the back of the garbage truck. I snorted at the idea of the day that they found those, and how the scenario played out. Okie Doke pushed the door open with her cute blonde forehead for her morning business, and Rudy made his cooing breakfast bags. I stood up tall, stretched, and looked out toward the Gulf. On one hand, everything felt safe and peaceful, but on the other, a tiny something felt off. I tried to shake it off and tell myself it was that old negative energy trying to trick me, but the energy didn't feel manipulative, it felt protective. I recognized it for what it was, I asked God to be with me, and I went inside. That's the end of that chapter. And it's perfect timing because I see people coming out to swim, and that's perfectly fine. Thanks for hanging out with me, and hopefully I'll see you again in chapter 12. It's called Floyd. The book is about to pick up big time, so please come back for next week. And I hope the birds weren't too loud, and I think it's somebody else's time to enjoy the river. Be blessed, be a blessing. Blessed be. Bye. She is a quick-minded woman and asked the... She's a quick-minded woman and asked the employee to put... First, I saw my... I thought I heard a snake. They have a slithering sound, don't they? I thought that was a snake. I'll show you later. Let's see. I had to present my eyes. That's not a regular fly, that's a horsefly, and he's trying to eat me. Get away. He began to talk about the anniversary of the first introduction of the... In quiet contemplation, my eyes... I was led to Hildegard von... Blue jay, hush!